What if that seashell necklace buried with a child 100,000 years ago holds the same message we whisper at funerals today? You are loved and remembered? Long before the first cities rose, before the first words were written, people looked to the sky and wondered what came after life. In the soft light of dawn, a mother in a small band of hunter-gatherers knelt beside the body of her child. She placed a shell necklace in the tiny hand, pressed a kiss to the cool forehead, and covered the body with earth. Around her, the others watched in silence, their faces marked by grief and hope. They did not have words for heaven or soul, but they felt the weight of loss and the need to remember. This scene, repeated countless times over tens of thousands of years, marks the beginning of burial practices. Archaeologists have found graves dating back more than 100,000 years in places like Qafzeh Cave in Israel and Shanidar Cave in Iraq. In these ancient tombs, bodies were carefully arranged, sometimes sprinkled with red ochre, a symbol of life and blood. Tools, beads, and animal bones were placed beside the dead, tokens of love, or perhaps offerings for a journey beyond. As the centuries passed, burial became more than a way to honor the dead. It became a way to understand life itself. In the Nile Valley, where the river's flood brought both life and death, the ancient Egyptians built a civilization obsessed with eternity. By the year 3000 before Christ, they were building tombs for their kings, first simple mastabas, then the great pyramids that still rise above the desert. The Egyptians believed that death was not an end, but a passage. The soul, or Ka, would live on if the body was preserved. So they perfected the art of mummification, wrapping the dead in linen, anointing them with oils, and placing amulets to protect them from evil. The Book of the Dead, a collection of spells and prayers, was buried with the deceased, a guide for the perilous journey through the underworld. The tombs themselves were filled with treasures, golden masks, painted coffins, food, and drink. Servants and animals were sometimes sacrificed to serve the king in the afterlife. The walls of the tombs told stories of the dead, their victories and loves, their hopes for eternity. For the Egyptians, to be remembered was to live forever. Far to the east, in the lands of China, burial practices took on their own unique form. In the year 210 before Christ, the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, was buried in a vast tomb guarded by thousands of life-sized terracotta soldiers. Each figure was different, a silent army meant to protect the emperor in the next world. The tomb itself was a miniature universe, with rivers of mercury and models of palaces and towers. But not only kings and emperors were honored in death. In villages across China, families buried their loved ones with care, placing favorite objects, food, and sometimes even pets in the grave. The dead were believed to watch over the living, and rituals of ancestor worship became central to Chinese life. On the Qingming festival, families still visit the graves of their ancestors, sweeping the tombs and offering food and incense. In the lands of the Celts, burial mounds dotted the green hills. These barrows, built from earth and stone, held the remains of chieftains and warriors, surrounded by weapons, jewelry, and sometimes the bones of horses. The Celts believed in an afterlife, a land of eternal feasting and battle. Their burial practices reflected a world where the line between life and death was thin, and the spirits of the dead could return to guide or haunt the living. The Greeks and Romans, too, saw burial as a sacred duty. In Athens, the dead were laid to rest outside the city walls, their graves marked by carved stones and statues. Offerings of wine, oil, and flowers were made to honor the spirits. The Romans built grand tombs along the roads leading out of the city, so that the dead would be remembered by all who passed. They believed that the soul would cross the river Styx, ferried by Charon, and that proper burial was needed to ensure safe passage. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that bring history's greatest mysteries to life. In the Americas, burial practices were as varied as the peoples who lived there. The ancient Maya built tombs deep within their pyramids, filling them with jade, pottery, and the bones of sacrificed captives. The Moche of Peru created elaborate burial chambers for their rulers, complete with gold ornaments and painted murals. In the forests of North America, the Hopewell people built great earthen mounds, some shaped like animals, to honor their dead. Across Africa, burial was a time of music and dance, of mourning and celebration. In West Africa, the Yoruba people believed that the dead joined the ancestors, who watched over the living and could be called upon for guidance. Funerals were grand affairs, with drumming, singing, and feasting. Masks and statues were carved to honor the spirits, and the graves were tended with care. In the Pacific Islands, burial took many forms. On some islands, the dead were buried in the earth. On others, they were placed in caves or even hung in trees. The Maori of New Zealand practiced secondary burial, exhuming the bones after a year and placing them in sacred places. Each ritual was a way to connect the living and the dead, to ensure that the ancestors would bless the land and the people. As time marched on, burial practices continued to evolve. In medieval Europe, the churchyard became the resting place for most people, the graves marked by simple crosses or elaborate tombs. The wealthy built family crypts, while the poor were buried in unmarked plots. The rituals of death, wakes, processions, prayers became woven into the fabric of daily life. In every culture, burial was more than a practical matter. It was a way to express love, to seek comfort, to find meaning in the face of loss. The objects placed in graves, beads, tools, food, letters, tell stories of lives lived and dreams cherished. The care taken in preparing the body, the songs sung, the tears shed, all speak to the universal need to remember and to be remembered. Even today, the echoes of ancient burial practices can be seen around the world. In Mexico, the Day of the Dead blends indigenous and Catholic traditions, as families build altars and visit the graves of loved ones, sharing food and stories. In Japan, the Obon Festival honors the spirits of ancestors with lanterns and dances. In every corner of the globe, people gather to mourn, to celebrate, and to keep the memory of the dead alive. The story of ancient burial practices is a story of humanity itself, a story of love and loss, of hope and fear, of the search for meaning in a world that is both beautiful and fragile. It is a story written in stone and bone, in song and silence, in the hearts of those who remember. So, the next time you walk through an old cemetery, see a pyramid rising against the sky, or hold a keepsake from a loved one, remember the long journey of those who came before. Remember the mother in the dawn light, the king in his golden tomb, the child with a shell necklace. Remember that history is not just made by the living, but by the ways we honor the dead. Ancient burial practices are a living story, a bridge between worlds, a testament to the enduring power of memory and love. If you enjoyed this journey into the heart of ancient burial practices, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. There are more stories waiting to be told right here.